You're listening to Bizarre Buffet, a podcast of all you can eat weird. I'm your host, Mark Tauriello.
I'm Jen Wilson.
And I'm Marc Bluestein.
There'll be food and drink and ghosts, and perhaps even a few murders. You're all invited.
When we first went in, one of the people said, "Who are you?" And Tex said, "I'm the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's business."
All right, so we're on episode 8.
Oh my God, 8.
Episode 8 of Bizarre ASMR.
The Bizarre Buffet ASMR Hour. We're glad that you joined us. Hello.
and a happy early birthday to our very own Mark Tauriello.
Oh, it's
me.
I know.
I know. Your birthday's tomorrow. We're recording the
4th of
night before.
July.
Yes.
That's right. And due to quarantine, we were unable to get the bodies we would use to sacrifice in honor of him. But it's okay.
It's okay.
It's all right. I'm turning 33.
33 years old.
Wow.
I don't know if that's a good number or not. I like the odd numbers.
Yeah.
I'm more of an
Why
even
not?
person.
Even Steven.
Yeah, I'm an even Steven.
That's okay.
It's all right.
You know,
Yeah,
nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. Nothing
Well, how
wrong
funny.
with that.
How funny that my birthday falls on the 4th of July and I'm the least patriotic person that I know.
Yeah, it's true. It is very true.
Really?
You
I was
really
expecting to see you on Instagram in your American,
My red, white, and blue
your
jockstrap.
American. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Now the closest he gets is a Lana Del Rey music video.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. But Jennifer Wilson, can you tell us what we're talking about today?
Yeah, what's today's topic?
So we're talking about paranormal activity.
Yes.
Thank you. I
Ghosts.
was waiting for an ooh. Thank you.
Ooh,
Thank you.
ghost activity.
So I'm just curious. Have either of you ever had a paranormal experience? I know we've all believed in spirits and ghosts. Have you had any firsthand experience?
I've been haunted since childbirth, but no, I mean, I've never had nothing that is classic. We have had some odd encounters in our apartment that we're not sure if it is just cabinets opening on their own because they're not secured tightly enough. But we have gone into our kitchen, and I might add, and I after buying a Ouija board, and we would hear them pop open. And I remember one night Mark went out to look at the cabinets, and he's like, "Can you come out here and take a look at this?" So I did, and I was like, "Oh yeah," and he closed all of them, and I watched him close each one. And then he comes back, and while he's in the middle of a sentence that goes something like, "If that opens one more fucking time, I know there's something happening." And before he could finish it, you hear the I'm not
Yeah, there's like a click. It's like our cabinets have like a magnet snap thing.
Yeah.
So it makes a very distinct noise when you close it. Like you can't quietly close these shitty cabinets.
No. You
Interesting.
cannot.
Very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, and aside from that, I mean, I've just have had more of like just energy, like feeling of a presence.
Here?
Well, yeah, I remember. Yes. And I told you this story, but I remember one night I had woken up. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And it was like watching a show where someone says to you, like, "Oh, there was this feeling."
Mm-hmm.
And I just knew someone was there. Someone was watching me. And I had never experienced this feeling. And trust me, I am well versed in anxiety and panic. It is something that a lot of us here relate
Of
to.
course.
But this was different. I could not fall back asleep. I felt this kind of presence lingering like by the door. And so I went up because from our bed, you can see our hallway. And I went up to close it because I was like, all right, well, maybe I'll feel better because, you know, it's not like open space that I can see into a little bit. And the feeling still just made me so entirely uncomfortable, but I've never seen any apparitions. And I'll stop talking now.
That's so odd. No, I mean, our apartment's a 1-bedroom, and, you know, our kitchen is horrendous. It's not even updated. It's like the size of a closet. And our bathroom, it's like beige, and it looks like, I don't know, a bad 90s renovation. So I don't know what ghost would want to haunt this place.
I don't know.
I don't know either. No.
I mean, we do have a sick poster collection.
You
We
do.
do.
You guys
That's
have
why.
a very, very just sick decor in your
Thank you.
apartment.
We try.
Yeah,
We really
you
try.
guys do. And your apartment's
Thank you.
spotless as hell as well. So
Oh,
I make them ghosts clean.
That's right. But Jen, do you have any stories? And then we'll circle back to Mark because I feel like Jen might have something.
Yeah, I want to hear.
yeah, sure. So growing up in my home that, you know, my mom actually just sold a year ago to date, we used to have some sort of activity, and you would look out our front door and you would see like somebody moving.
Oh.
Like you would see some sort of activity, and we would go to the door and nobody would be there.
Wait, like when you're going to the door from the outside,
The
you would
inside. So from the inside of the house,
see. Mhm.
just seeing some sort of movement right outside the door. And I would go to the door and I would not see anybody there. My mother has had the same exact encounters, my father as well. So there was definitely some sort of spirit that lingered around. And it was never anything that was like disturbing or worrisome or scary. It just was always, you know, just having some extra company around, I guess.
Do you think someone died in that house?
They very well could have. I'm not 100% sure the history of the home. I do know that there was a single mother that was living there before we bought the house, and she had children who grew up. I'm not sure what the husband situation was, if he passed or not, but it always looked like a little child in the window.
Oh,
yeah,
That's so strange.
it was really strange. But like I said, it was never anything that we ever questioned. It just was there.
Well, and just like a quick side note for our listeners, how Mark just asked Jen if she knew if anyone died in her house. Maybe if you go to diedinhouse.com and use the promo code Bizarre Buffet, you can find out if somebody died in your house.
Yeah.
Yes, but that's a really fascinating story.
Yeah, it's
definitely.
It definitely is a fascinating, interesting story. And I just always remember it being like that from when I was a kid till I was an adult.
Was it always the same door?
It was always the front door.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
So odd.
So odd. But Mark, do you have anything?
You know,
He's haunted by me.
I have. It's weird. So I don't have anything that's sensational where, like, you know, a bed flipped over in the air or something. I've had a lot of small things here and there happen, but I did go to Drew University, which is a college in New Jersey, and it's the second most haunted college in the country.
Ooh.
And
Shout out Haunted College.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was an RA for a few years, and the years that I was an RA, I happened to be put in the 2 dorms that were haunted.
Okay.
And like one night I heard furniture moving in the dorm above mine, and there was another RA that lived above me, so I knew her, and I was like, damn girl, were you like moving your furniture and shit? And she was like, I was gone all weekend. And I was like, well, I heard stuff moving around. And then this is really weird, and I can't explain this, but you know, my freshman year we had like to share a bathroom and showers, like a locker room. It was really gross. And I was taking a shower, and from the pipes I heard Gregorian chant music.
Oh.
Okay.
But
Interesting.
there were like but there weren't like any cults.
Musician ghosts.
Yeah, like I don't know, but there was a club called That Medieval Thing, and they dressed up in like medieval attire and
Like chamber singers?
I think so. So I think maybe there could have been like a medieval thing choir rehearsal, and maybe I picked it up in the pipes.
Maybe.
But just like small things here and there with that school. I think someone hung themselves in one of the dorms in the attic of Asbury Hall, and I was the RA of the entire building. And the attic was always off limits, and I had a master key, and I was like, "Ooh, I want to be the RA of this building, so I could like get the master key and open the attic." And it was padlocked, and they wouldn't let me in.
It's like that movie, The Skeleton Key.
They wouldn't let me in. So then I lied. I was just like, "Oh, some of the theme houses have like things up there that they need, for like, group club activities. So can I get access to the attic to get their supplies?" And I guess they knew I was full of shit, and they would not let me in the attic. But apparently that's where someone hung themselves.
Well, I guess it's not the type of thing you can go to the admissions office and ask, is it?
No, but we do have a special guest today, Vinny Carbone.
Yes.
Well, tell us about
Let's
him.
hear about Vinny.
Vinny is a paranormal investigator.
Yes.
Yeah.
Vinny.
So when he was in college, he experienced some weird paranormal occurrence in his college dorm, and ever since then, he has been, exploring, paranormal activity. So he's based in New York City, and he is a resident paranormal investigator and lecturer at the Morris Jamel Mansion Museum.
How cool.
Yeah, in Manhattan, and it's the oldest building in New York. And for anybody who's listening, because tonight on Disney Plus, they are streaming Hamilton live production. And yes, actually, Morris Jamel Mansion is where Lin-Manuel Miranda created Hamilton. So there's a lot of history.
How crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool, fun history there. A lot of spirits, a lot of ghosts. And he actually leads a tour there once a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to go on the tour.
I think that once this is all over, and things start opening up, we absolutely have to go.
I'm in.
So
I wonder what ghosts are probably thinking right now if they see everyone quarantining wearing masks. I would just love to know like a ghostly perspective.
Right.
Maybe they're taking bets and they're like, "Oh, I hope that one dies. They would be a cool friend."
I mean, we definitely need to ask Vinny that when he comes on. I think he definitely might have a better answer for us. So
I'm super excited.
Yeah. So, he is just known for approaching all of this paranormal sense with such respect and dignity and humor, very personable. And I'm really excited to hear what he has to say. So let's welcome Vinny.
Hi, Vinny.
Hey, Vinny.
If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will even distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. I mean, how cool is that, right? It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. On with the show.
Let's talk about ghosts.
Yeah. We're so excited to hear all about it.
So
welcome to Bizarre Buffet.
Yeah, welcome to Bizarre Buffet. Thank you for coming on and talking to us. So I'm curious to hear about the experience that you had in your dorm in college, which led you to become a paranormal investigator.
Okay, thank you for specifying, because I had a lot of experiences in my dorm in college, but
the one that made you
the ghost hunting,
the moment that you decided to go forward and pursue this,
your defining moment.
Yeah,
gotcha. So in college, I had a bunch of different little jobs on campus just to try to survive, and one of them I did what was called night desk. So I just sat at the desk in the lobby of the building that I lived in, and I would check people's IDs that indicated that they lived in the building.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have to be there from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. And this one year is my senior year, and I remember I think it was a very slow night. It was like a Tuesday or a Wednesday. It wasn't a party night. And I remember it was after midnight, and no one had come in for a while. And so the way the lobby was set up was there was a door that you would scan your card and you'd come in. Then there was a second door that you would scan your card and you'd come in through that door. And then there was a very short hallway with two walls on either side. And then about, I want to say 10 to 15 feet from the door was my desk where I was stationed. And then to the right of me was a big common room area. And then just beyond that was two elevators. And then down the hallway from there was the stairwell. And then my back was up against the office where the RAs and the RD would work during the day. And then to the left of me was a women's room and a men's room. And so on this night, I was doing my thing. I needed to get something from the office. So I stood up. I walked around the corner to the office. I put my hand on the doorknob. It was locked. I was like, oh, I got to get the keys. So I came back around to my desk to get the keys, and that took maybe all of about 4 seconds because it's all very close to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came back to the desk, all of a sudden I heard the sound of water running. I was like, what the heck is that? And I was like, is someone in the bathroom? And now I did not hear anyone come in. I didn't see anyone. They would have had to walk right through me. I had been sitting there since at least 10 o'clock. It was now after 12. So all of a sudden I hear water running in the 2 seconds that I'm away from the desk. And it was really bizarre. So I go up to the bathrooms and I hear it coming from the men's room. I open the door and the lights were turned off. And by the way, no one ever used these bathrooms, ever. And so I turn on the light and I see that the faucet is turned on, and it was two knobs that you would have to turn on to turn the water on. I was like, what? And I turned them off, and I sat there in disbelief. It was one of the most surreal moments of my life. It was so bizarre that I had to really stop and think that I met, because I was working long hours,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess I was stressed out. I was like, no, I know. I just saw that my hand is wet. I know what happened. So I called my roommates. They came down. I told them what just happened. I explained everything to them, and they laughed at me. And then I was like, guys, I'm telling you, this is what happened. I'm like, well, I don't know. Then they went back upstairs. Then the elevators kept coming up and down and opening and closing, and no one was coming off.
Wow.
I was like, okay, you know what? That could just be someone screwing with the elevator, whatever. The same thing happened to another night desk attendant, a girl, a couple of weeks later, who was a mutual friend of one of my roommates. Then we found out from the RD of the building, who is this older woman who's done this job for years, since the 70s, that in the 90s, the 1 year that she was working in another building, a male RA had hanged himself in the stairwell right behind where I was sitting.
Wow.
So that was the moment when it all clicked for me. And I said, there's no way that there's no connection there. And think about it. Think of the bathroom that it was coming from. It was the men's room,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it was a male RA. And this is one of the things in which someone would say, okay, let's say there is such a thing as ghosts. Because let me preface, I am a skeptical believer, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, people say, oh, let's say ghosts are real. Why are they going to come from the dead to turn on a light or turn on a faucet? Wouldn't they do something more extreme? I don't know. I don't have that answer. I've never been dead. I've never been a ghost that I know.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what to tell you, but what the hell could that have been?
Right.
And my dad is a contractor. I worked at a hardware store. I know some basic plumbing. That doesn't make sense, right? So it doesn't hurt that I also was always very interested in ghost stories and things like that. So that's kind of how it started from there.
You said that another person in your building that sat at the desk went through the same experience that you did. Were they both at the same time? Was it like a similar time frame that this happened?
Like time of night?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, well, it would have been because, like I said, we would do that job from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. So it would have been in that window right there.
Yeah, because you had the same shift.
And think about it. I mean, let's say it had nothing to do with the paranormal. The chances of that happening are kind of slim. Like it would have, so it sounded kind of deliberate.
And I mean, just the combination of that and then the elevators and everything. It's just like a very odd thing. And like you said, you were like, I sat there, people would walk past me. They had to. It's crazy.
I think what's interesting too, I think I would be curious to know, like, was that the time frame in which this male student hung himself?
Oh,
that's what I was thinking.
I would be curious to know that.
Of course, yeah. I mean, there's so many unknown facts, and then also too, don't forget, my back was literally up against the exterior wall of the office in which the RAs worked in, so he was down there all of the time.
Wow.
He would have been down there all of the time, yeah. So it was one of those deals where it was like a corner office, and it had this like sliding glass doors where it had like the lock on it. You could take the lock off and then slide the door to the side to open it up. So, yeah. And there was no one down there in the lobby. I was able to see everything from where I was sitting. I knew who was in the building with me, or at least on that floor. So yeah, that was the moment in which you went from a passing interest to now it's like, okay, I need to find resolution.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a moment that would make you want to. I can see why.
So with that, I know a lot of times with hauntings, there's two different types. There's like the residual haunting and an intelligent haunting. Would you?
Yeah, very good.
So I feel, thank you. Well, I did my research, but I want to know, do you think maybe that was a residual haunting for sure at the school?
It's hard to say. I would say that I said earlier that I think it was rather deliberate, so I would say that that's intelligent.
Oh.
There are other buildings on campus, as with many college campuses, have their have their ghost stories.
Mm.
You see a mix of both, but I think in that isolated incident, I would have called that an intelligent haunting.
Is one more common than the other, or are they both like 50-50?
It's about the same.
Now, for people listening who may not necessarily know, Vinny, could you define what an intelligent haunting is as opposed to a residual?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a residual haunting is, I'll give you examples. If I was to say, every once in a while around 9 p.m., I see this woman come down the stairs. That's a residual haunting. An intelligent haunting is if I was to say, 9 p.m., I see this woman come down the stairs and she stops and she looks at me and then motions to me. That's highly intelligent. So it's basically, a residual is like a loop on a DVD playing over and over again. The intelligent haunting is when that entity actually directly engages you, answers a question, responds using some kind of instrument that we're using that night, or gives some kind of response on a digital voice recorder. Okay, so that's the differences.
Very cool.
So I would love for you, Vinny, to talk about your experience with the Mars Jamel Mansion and, the work that you did there, because I personally have been there and I definitely have felt some sort of spirits when I was there.
Yeah, so I guess we should start at the beginning, how I came to be there.
Yeah.
So I first set foot in the mansion, I want to say, in the fall of 2014. So if anyone doesn't know, Marshall Mansion, the very brief of it is oldest surviving house in the borough of Manhattan. George Washington stayed there for 5 weeks during the American Revolution. and it was built by Roger Morris, British colonel, and then ultimately it was owned by Eliza Jamel and Stephen Jamel. But Eliza Jamel was the longest resident, and then and it's still standing to this day. It's a historic house. So we did our initial investigation. It's a very, very interesting night. Had a lot of cool experiences. There was one guy in the group who was a total non-believer, total skeptic, total, was rolling his eyes the entire time. It took one thing to happen for him to come back downstairs to the basement and be like, I believe, that's it. I'm sold. And the rest of the night, he was asking questions. He's like, oh my God, this changed my life. And that's usually the deal.
What did he say that changed his mind?
Yeah, do you remember what it was?
Yeah, I do. So we were all in the basement, and so the first time that we had gone there to do our investigation, we were in the basement, and we heard the sound of a bell ring, like a very distant, faint sound of a bell ring. So the next time we came back, we wanted to employ something called the Singapore effect. And the Singapore effect is when you take some kind of sound or action or activity that the spirit might recognize, and you do that on the investigation. So for me personally, I like to use music. So whatever time frame the person that we're investigating lived in, I'll try to use music from that time. On this night, what we did was, being that we had this previous experience with the sound of the bell ringing, my friend had the sound of a dinner bell on his phone. He downloads the sound. So we were all in the basement, and then my friend went upstairs, and he goes, who wants to come with me? And this skeptic went upstairs with him. And by the way, skeptic is not a negative thing as far as I'm concerned in this industry. Mm-hmm. Everyone needs to be a skeptic. Mm-hmm. You should not go into anything. Yes, absolutely, there's definitely ghosts here. That's the wrong way to go about it.
Yeah, like blind belief. It's good to have questions and all.
Exactly. Furthermore, it's not our job on these public investigations or lectures to convince you whether or not ghosts are real. That's not our job. Our job is to educate you what an actual ghost is. So anyway, on this night, he said, okay, who wants to go upstairs and try this out with me? This kid went up with him. They go upstairs. I stayed in the basement with the rest of the group. He went upstairs with him. He plays the sound of the dinner bell, and he goes, I want my dinner, I want my dinner. All of a sudden, they hear scraping coming down the stairs to the first floor, and then they hear a jiggle on the little door. There's like a door that's on the stairs leading up to the second floor. There's it's like a dummy door. It leads to nothing right now, but we believe that when it was an active home, that was a door that servants would have used to get to an additional staircase or to get to the basement. We're still trying to piece that together. Nonetheless, it would have been utilized by servants. Mm-hmm. And then the motion sensor light in the dining room went off. Oh. So that's all that kid needed to see to say, you know what, there's something to this.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good example. I mean,
yeah. So that's how I started there. And to talking to we got to talk. I was commissioned to write and direct a play for the museum that following October. The play was called Awakening in Ink, and it was in fact about the ghost of the house, based upon letters and newspaper articles that are in the archives of the mansion. So I pieced them together to create the script. And then while working on that show, I was offered a full-time job as the events director.
Yeah, I definitely want to do this once everything starts opening up again.
I know. I can't wait to visit.
Who do you think haunts the mansion specifically? I'm sure you could probably put it together in better words and more concisely than I can. So can you tell us maybe the history of the haunting of the mansion?
So a lot of people assume it's the George Washington or Eliza Jamel. And that's because those are the most popular names, as well as Aaron Burr. But the reality is that the mansion was built in 1765. And thousands of people have come through that home. It was a tavern. It was a military occupancy. It was vacant for 20 years. And that all happened before the Jamels even moved in 1810. So who knows who's hanging around there? that being said, Eliza Jamel was the longest resident of the house. The house does have a very feminine feel to it. And so we celebrate that. We're proud of that. And certainly for it to be Eliza with some of the things that she does around certain events. By that, I mean, whenever we have large events like weddings or galas, something wacky happens, as well as whenever we have a play, we have some kind of odd experience. And that would make sense because Eliza loved hosting parties, and she also was an actor. So we feel that's her way of trying to, get into the show.
And that would make a lot of sense. But yeah,
She's taking that spotlight.
That's right. She's like, yeah, my house. Why was I not invited?
So that's who we think. And I will say that depending on what we do have, the hot spots, like the front parlor on the first floor, the basement, and Aaron Burr's bedroom are the most active in the house.
I have a kind of silly question for you. Has anyone ever
silly
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we're talking about speaking to spirits, so that ship sailed a long time.
Right. Everyone has to have at least a little sense of humor when we talk about, different topics. But has anyone ever gone running from the house, or has anybody ever had Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Is it often?
I could tell you, at least in recent history, I wasn't there for this, but I think it was just prior to me becoming a full-time employee. They were having a field trip. Now, so one of the ways that the mansion sustains itself is to have school trips. And there's about 9,000 kids that come through a year. And, with the little kids, we don't talk about the ghost stuff or anything like that. We don't need to put that in their head. When it comes to the high school age kids, again, we don't talk about the ghost stuff, but at that time now they've become more self-aware, and they look at an old house, they automatically assume it's haunted.
Mm-hmm.
And they've also heard the stories from their parents, and they've seen the shows that we've been on. So they come in, at a different level. They come in jacked up. So this was, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago. There was a field trip with high school kids. They were in the basement, and our educator was talking to them. So her back was to the fireplace, and she was facing them, and they were all looking at her. And she's a very straightforward, very down-to-earth educator. And all of a sudden, I think it was to the right of her, a mortar and pestle, the thing that you would grind up medicines and spices.
Mm-hmm.
The actual, I don't know which one it is, the one that actually does the grind, the one you hold in your hand starts to move inside of the bowl.
That's weird. Those things are heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it wouldn't move
as
on.
soon as that happens, two girls scream, say, "We're the F out of here," and bolt out of the building and refuse to come back in.
Oh my God.
And the educator, as soon as that happens, she goes, "So that happened. We're going to acknowledge that happened, then we're going to move on."
Okay. She's like, all right, let's continue.
I'm gonna have to use that at work.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good one.
I'm just curious as to why possibly Aaron Burr's room would be a hot spot for paranormal events.
So that particular room would have been the man of the house. So it would have been Roger Morris, then Stephen Jamel, and then Aaron Burr lived in there. Aaron Burr was only in the house, I want to say, about 8 months before he was a bad boy and was kicked out. That room also would have been used by officers during the war. It also would have been utilized when it was a tavern. So who knows who's hanging around in there.
Right.
That room is where we got, to date, the most profound EVP, electronic voice phenomena, that I've ever been a part of on an investigation. It's pretty wild. At the 3-second mark of this recording, you hear a very loud, blatant, screech, and we don't know what it is.
Whoa.
I heard that recording because it was featured, I think, on another podcast, and it's so spooky because it's like a loud shriek. And it almost sounds like the mom from Carrie, and she's like, "Oh, they're all gonna laugh at you," but I don't think that's what actually recorded.
So I have a theory.
Mm-hmm.
I have a theory. So we got that recording. I think that's going back 3 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And so about a year later, we were doing another private investigation with a psychic medium from California.
Oh, wow.
And and she said whenever she comes to town, she likes to do investigations at the mansion. And so it was myself, another employee, and her. And she said, guys, something's drawing me to the back corner of the house, specifically the women's room. So as silly as it sounds, we piled into the women's room with chairs, and we did a couple of EVP sessions. But when it was at home, that was the cupboard where they would get their supplies. And so we're in there, and all of a sudden, one of the recordings, you hear the very faint sound of like a screech. And when I heard it, I was like, that sounds like a monkey, like a small monkey.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds ridiculous, but if you stop and think about it, think about who is living in these homes.
Right.
Eccentric people, it was not uncommon for them to have exotic animals like that. Many people still do. That's not that far off base. Then I remembered that screech up in Aaron Burr's room. Then it kind of clicked for me. That always, to me, sounded like a bird. I was like, you know what? That might be it. We might be hearing their pets.
Oh, wow.
That's kind of gives you chills in a way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because that recording, it is very off-putting.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
now there's one more. I just want to add. There's one when I would tell this story and I would show people this recording on public investigations when we were in Aaron Burr's room, and it always freaked people out. And then a docent of the mansion came up to me and he gave me a piece of intel that I found very interesting. There's a very, very old book that was written about Elijah Jamel. And I gotta say, it's like widely known that a lot of the facts in the book have been disputed. Okay, but that being said, one of the stories in the book was that Elijah Jamel, when she was a younger woman, and she was working as an actor, and supposedly she worked as a prostitute. I don't believe that's the case. I believe it was that at that time, actors and prostitutes and people of that, grouping of society were all kind of lumped together.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where that rumor came from, unfortunately. But anyway, one of the stories was that she would keep a parrot outside of her house so guys would know where to go. So I was like, well, I don't know how true that is. It's interesting, but I think that if that is a bird that we're hearing, that was from later in life. It may not have even been her.
Wow. So it's like a Victorian booty call, but a booty call.
Booty call.
Exactly.
Wow.
That's crazy.
I have this one question that I would love to ask you because you seem to know so much about the topic. I notice with a lot of these ghost stories, it normally takes place in big houses or old mansions, right? Where like maybe someone was really attached to it or something tragic happened. Now, I grew up in a very crime-ridden neighborhood where people were literally like shot and killed on the streets. The crime rate and the murder rate was so high, and you never hear about hauntings like in these low-income neighborhoods where more tragedies happen. So I'm wondering, like, what's your take on that? Do you think towns? I grew up in Irvington, New Jersey. Like, do you think that towns like that are haunted or not haunted, or like why is it always like these big mansions?
So that's a great question because I actually have gotten asked that. Like, why is it always a ghost from like the 1700s? Or like, why is it not the guy who died last week?
Yeah.
The reality is it's all about how it's presented to you. Meaning, producers from a ghost hunting show are more likely to go to the beautiful old Gothic Victorian-looking mansion rather than going into the ghetto and saying, okay, where should we set up the boom mic? You know what I mean?
Right. That is true. Point. That is a really good point.
I would never have thought of that, but because that applies to so many things, really. I mean, anything on television.
That's the reality. Yes, absolutely. So, and I'll give you an example. So I live in an apartment in a studio apartment in Harlem, and I have had several experiences in my unit. Okay, my building was built in, I believe, 1923, let's say, and I've had a couple of wacky experiences in my unit alone. I'll give you a good one. There was a gentleman who lived in this building. He lived one floor below me, and he was an absolute nuisance. Okay, he was the first time I ever encountered him. I was coming home and I saw him slapping. He had a puppy. He was slapping this puppy around by the front door, and I said, in that, in much more colorful language, I informed him that he should stop that. And he's like, yeah, whatever. I was like, yeah, no, not whatever. And so anyway, he didn't realize that I lived in the building. So we come in, we have an exchange of words the hallway, and that's what began our relationship. Every other time I would see him, he would be drunk. He got locked out of the building in the middle of the night in his underwear, and he was pressing all the buttons to get let in.
Oh, God.
Another time, myself and an older couple coming into the building got stuck behind him on the stairs because he was drunk and his pants were falling down. The guy was just a nightmare, right? So anyway, the landlord wanted me to go to like landlord court or whatever, or tenant court, to try to testify against him to try to ultimately get him evicted. I said, I'm not really about that. I'm not trying to get involved. I got to live here, whatever. And they kept getting dragged out. Anyway, ultimately, one day I had a friend visiting, and, we go to sleep. In the middle of the night, I feel something tickle my foot. So what the hell? And I woke up and I jumped and I thought it was my friend, but he was knocked out. I was like, what the hell was that? I was like, I don't know. It was weird. So I go back to sleep. The next morning we wake up. He's got to get the train back to Long Island. And the next floor below us, I see medics, a cop, and a woman crying. I'm like, oh boy. And I know this scene because I work EMS. I'm like, someone's dead. And later on in the day, I see the cop. I'm like, yo, what happened? He goes, one of the tenants died. So I'm like, okay. I found out a couple of weeks later, they're like, yeah, we don't got to go to tenant court anymore. I found out who died. It was the guy who I had issues with. So I'm thinking on his way out, he screwed with me one last time, and he tickled my foot to wake me up.
Oh.
He got the last laugh on it.
Oh, my God.
Or maybe it was like the puppy saying thank you.
Yeah, saying, oh,
maybe.
Thank God, this dude.
Yeah. So the answer to your question is, if there is such a thing as ghosts, they're everywhere. It's not selective. It's not just reserved for the beautiful home.
Yeah. It's just television needs visuals.
Right.
And,
I grew up in the ghetto, in a ghetto neighborhood, and people were getting killed all the time. And I was like, damn, I don't see any ghosts. I was kind of disappointed.
No. Well, there's always time.
There is.
Yes.
You never know.
I just want to add one thing. So when I give these lectures, or anytime I'm able to have these conversations, one thing I want to impart to people is that there is a very, very big difference between what you see on television and in Hollywood and what an actual paranormal investigation is. And I encourage anyone who has an interest in this topic, don't be in the closet about it. Please go out there and learn and read and try to get into a couple of investigations and really try to vet who leads them, because I'm going to let you know right now, there are some absolute, whacks in the industry, as with all industries. But, just please try to be safe, do your homework, and just try to have fun with it. When I lead these investigations, I go around, I say in the beginning, right at the very beginning, I say, listen, I could go around the room right now and I can tell who bought the ticket and who got dragged here, right? I said, so to those of you who got dragged here, thank you for coming out. Stop the tough guy act and just have fun. And you'll have something to talk about tomorrow at brunch. And it kind of takes the tension out of the room.
Yeah.
And usually those are the ones who, like, when something does happen, it's like, oh my God. And then they start asking all the questions.
Yeah.
But I want to do something really quick if we have time.
Yeah.
I want to see if this works, okay? So the big thing for me with this is I'm a firm believer that if you are willing to put yourself out there and say, I believe in this topic, this is something I take a stance on, and this could go for anything, politics, religion, anything, right? For me, let's keep it to the paranormal. If you're willing to say, I'm an advocate for this and I believe in it, you should be willing to at least hear out the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what I do. I hear out the other side. I explore both sides, the believers and non-believers. So I do that by way of psychology, the psychology behind this. How did we get to this point? Why do we believe in this stuff? I'll give you an example, okay? If I was to ask you, all of you, what are thought to be the scariest parts of a house? What would you say?
Mark, what would you say?
I would say an attic.
Okay.
Okay.
I would say the basement.
Okay.
Yeah, I would go with basement as well.
Okay. Now, that is the answer 100% of the time when I ask that question. Now, can I ask you why?
Yeah. Well, for me personally, the basement, it just kind of has, I don't know, they're kind of most of the time dark. You know, I associate ones that aren't finished or redone. It's something about going, like, descending into this dark space and like corners that aren't well lit.
And like the sounds that come from the basement too. You know,
Yep.
different types of you know, like I know like a lot of times you find like the boiler in the basement and you know, like your washing machine and like these noises.
Dead bodies.
Yeah, dead bodies. But no, like these noises that come from the basement, it just makes it very eerie.
Mm-hmm.
So you all are saying exactly what I would say and in my response. So basically the quick summary is, as children, we're not usually hanging out in the attic or in the basement unless they're finished spaces and you know you're supposed to. So as children, we automatically have this distant association with these spaces in the home. And unfortunately for humans, what we don't know, we tend to be scared of, right? And so there it is. And you know, you like you said, Jen, you got loud noises and bangs and things coming from your parents will disappear for a couple of minutes and they come back up, or you know, the kind of thing. Also, take it back to when we were living in caves and living in the jungle, right? I can't see into that dark cave. I don't know what's waiting to jump out and eat me. Also, we have a natural fear of things above and below us. Above us, because there'd be predatory animals waiting in the treetops to jump down and attack us. Below us, if we're going through the water or going through the brush, there could be a snake, there could be a gator, there could be something that's waiting to attack us. So we already have this hesitation of things above and below. We like things on a level playing field.
Mm-hmm.
And then to take it even a step further into more modern terms or modern conditions, in these locations, what do we find? Pipes, wires, cables, Wi-Fi systems, all the electrical. And those things give off EMF, electronic magnetic field. And those things affect us in so much as nausea, visual disturbance, paranoia, you feel like someone's watching you, and that all sounds like what people associate with haunting.
Right.
So I'm not saying that we had this entire conversation to discredit it about, you know, I'm saying that there is no such thing as ghosts, but these right here, as soon as you take a quick look behind the curtain, you're like, okay, that makes sense as to what I might be experiencing. That's all.
Yeah, and I mean, and like you said earlier, you know, you like people who are skeptics, you know, you want people to question and all of that. So it just kind of gives you that perspective of, you know, like, listen, okay, there are things that can contribute to what would be associated with a haunting or that feeling.
It reminds me of a story. I don't know if it was a TED Talk that we saw on YouTube or YouTube video, but this woman was a, you know, paranormal investigator of sorts.
Yeah.
And what happened is that she was living in a house and, you know, she was getting sick. She was having hallucinations and, you know, they kept looking at the pipes. There was nothing wrong. So they chalked it up to, I think your house is haunted. Well, what happened is that she had a carbon monoxide leak in the house.
That's very common.
And it wasn't caught. And what ended up happening is that it was all from that. So she's an advocate for paranormal investigating and making sure your house does not have carbon monoxide.
Yeah, that's often one of the first things I will ask. Like, when was the last time you had this checked? Do you have like a detector, stuff like that? So, yeah.
And I think that's fascinating, particularly about what you do, because you are like, hey, no, like, let's look at all of it instead of, oh, you absolutely have a haunting. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
It gives
Yeah.
people more confidence, and it gives you a lot of credibility in what you do. So that's amazing.
That's my approach. Everyone has their own style.
Can I ask you a quick question? I mean, what do you think of Ed and Lorraine Warren?
I never met them personally. I know their nephew. The jury is out as to how legitimate they were. Depending who you ask, they'll tell you that they were just in it to, pump out books and, try to get media coverage. And other people say, they were the real deal. I don't know. And I am not saying anything that hasn't been said very publicly about them.
Yeah.
I'm not taking a stance one way or the other.
Absolutely.
So as I said, I never met them, never got the chance to work with them. So I honestly don't know. But I will say that they did a lot to get the topic to the public forefront at a time in which there was not reality television, or this was something that was not talked about so freely. They did a lot of good work in getting the word out.
Yeah.
Respect.
Yes.
Yeah.
So where can our listeners find you?
You can follow me on Instagram. I post images from past investigations and upcoming investigations on there. Yeah, Carbone Paranormal. Very simple. And then ultimately, it's all going to go up to YouTube, and which you're going to see interviews and other footage from investigations there as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
We can't wait.
Thank you guys so much for having me. This was great.